recall who, and I did take a puff off it.
And you gave Greg your Adderall earlier on May 20th?
I don't recall giving him any of mine, but I don't know.
And then you snorted that amphetamine with Greg at the sardine can?
No, I did not at the sardine can. I mean, are you talking about inside, or what do you? What
When
do you
did
mean?
you snort amphetamine with Greg or Adderall with Greg?
I don't. I was, I'm trying to recall if I did, because I remember saying to Greg, I don't want to snort any. I don't like that. I do have a prescription for it, and I do take it regularly. The correct way to, and just ingest it. I take it daily, and I just don't like typically snorting anything. So.
But you snorted it on that night, that morning?
I think at some point I did. I don't know if it was like when we were leaving the watering hole, or when we had just maybe gotten to the sardine can. We parked in that back bank parking lot. I think it might have been then. I just don't totally recall when I did.
So you snorted Adderall with Greg?
I think I did a little bit. I'm not certain on that though.
I'm just looking for a yes or no answer. You snorted amphetamine with Greg?
It's hard to, from all the stories and everything I've heard afterwards, and I just don't know. I would lean towards yes, but I just don't specifically recall that me actually doing it. I remember the opportunity to, and I do remember saying no, that I wasn't going to. But I think because there was like 2 times, and I know one time I said no for sure, and maybe I think the one time I did, and I don't know when that was. I think either when we left the watering hole, or it was in Greg's car, I believe.
And then moving back to when you're at your house, Greg eventually left?
Yeah, after a short time period of us being there.
Dallas left?
Yep, a short time after Greg left.
And then you testified yesterday that you did your nighttime routine.
Yes.
What is that?
Basically, getting a glass of ice water, brushing my teeth, taking my contacts out, washing my face, and then getting ready for bed. Just undressing.
And then you testified that you woke up the next morning. When was that?
I don't know the exact time, but I think it was between like 6 and 7, like 6:30, I'm guessing.
So roughly that's 8 hours since you had saw Nikki, according to your testimony.
Yeah, that would be, I think it was about, I'm guessing around 11 o'clock that I had last seen her.
You did not call the police at 6:30?
No.
You did not call Nicole's sister at 6:30?
No.
You did not call Nicole's mother at 6:30?
No, I did not.
You didn't call any of your friends at 6:30?
No, I did not.
You didn't call your parents?
Nope.
You didn't call your brother?
No, I did not.
You just went back to bed?
Yeah, I was tired. I was hungover, and I had a crying baby, and took care of him and fed him, and went back to bed right away.
And you knew where Nikki was at that time?
No, I did not.
And then you woke up again around 11?
Yeah, I think approximately 11 o'clock.
And now it had been 12 hours since you had last seen Nikki?
Correct.
She still wasn't home for Dylan?
No, she was not.
Did you search for Nikki on foot or by vehicle?
No, I did not.
Still didn't call the police?
I did not at that time, no.
Because you knew you didn't have to?
I don't know what I was starting to get concerned, and, because I figured she was out, if she stayed out late, that, she was probably going to sleep in as well, and probably feeling similar to me, hungover and tired, that she was going to, sleep it off, that we had a lot to drink that night.
You finally called police around 4:30. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
And that's 17 hours since you last saw her?
Yeah, I think so, yep.
And that's also after her body was already found?
Yeah, at that time, and afterwards I did, yeah, that would be after.
And that's after a large police buildup off Hoffman Road.
Yeah, I was unaware of that police buildup until well after the fact.
And then you made sure that before police arrived, you took a shower.
Yeah, yep. I mean, I was feeling grubby and,
You wanted to
needed
hide
to wake up and,
You wanted to hide any proof that you were involved in her murder, so you took a shower before the police came.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't think Mr. Jurgens asked a question in about the last 6 or 7. These have all been testimony from the defense.
Well, it's cross-examination. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Thank you.
But let him give his answer before asking the next question, one at a time.
You then completed the missing person report, correct?
correct.
Officers left.
Yes, a long time after, that was a lengthy report.
But hours later, they had you come back to the police station.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple hours in between.
You spoke with officers for a long time that night.
Yeah, late until early in the next Sunday morning.
Because you were the suspect in Nicole's death.
At that time, I was not told that I was a suspect. I had saw those news articles that there was a missing body. I had a lot of feelings and thoughts going through my head and saying, praying that it's not her. And then at the same time, I'm thinking, oh my God, it is her. And it was just a very emotional time for me.
They called you the following days, correct?
They called me on Sunday at some point, yeah.
And they scheduled a meeting to collect your DNA?
Yeah, I think there was a couple calls back and forth. He said he would call me back, and then he gave me his number, and I think I called him back, and I don't really recall who called who back, and we did speak, I think like 2 times, maybe 3 times
So that's a yes.
on Sunday. Yes, yes.
And you chose not to give a DNA sample.
That is correct, after I had gotten some advice.
You chose not to give a DNA sample.
I was kind of told not to, so, I mean, I was willing to give one.
And
but
you made the choice not to.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, yes.
And you stayed in contact with Dallas too, because she was concerned.
I believe I spoke with her a time or two after, on Sunday maybe. I don't know, I was talking to a lot of people and people were calling me.
And she was upset.
I don't recall even the context of any of the conversations really on Sunday. I was a wreck.
She said, "What happened, Doug?" And you said, "I don't know. She hit her head."
I don't recall saying anything about her hitting her head at all.
You told Dallas, "I don't know. She hit her head."
I do not recall that, sir.
When you woke up on May 21st, Nikki's vehicle was in the garage, correct?
Yes.
And you drove that vehicle on May 21st?
No, I did not.
Why wouldn't you drive that vehicle to try to look for Nikki?
Because I did not have a key for it.
Doug, investigators found the keys in your house on a key rack that was actually labeled keys. How did you not know those were in your house?
Objection, Your Honor. That is in fact not in evidence, and it's not accurate.
Sustained.
And then moving on, Doug, to the evening of May 23rd, you were at your parents' house on Euro Lane,
That's, yeah, on Monday, yes.
and you received a call from Sergeant Steffens.
Yes, I did.
On direct examination, you said that call made you nervous.
Well, yeah, she said she was coming over to ask me more questions and,
So that call made you nervous.
not really nervous. I was just, a lot of thoughts were going through my mind. I was just an emotional wreck that entire time.
You testified yesterday that call made you nervous. Is that a yes or a no?
Yeah, partially I was nervous,
Is that a yes or a no?
Wait, let's not badger the witness. He's testified yesterday that it made him nervous. Let's go on to the next question.
And then the police did show up.
Yeah, 15 minutes or so after that.
At that point, the police knew Nicole had been murdered, correct?
I believe so. They did not say anything, but
They knew she was murdered 118 feet from your house.
I don't know what they knew at that point.
You knew all along what happened to Nikki.
No, I did not.
The police are at your parents' door and they make you come outside, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I just stepped out, yes.
They put you in handcuffs,
Yep,
and that's when the Brown County Sheriff's Office arrested you and told you you were under arrest for the murder of Nicole Vanderheiden.
that is correct.
I have no further questions.
Your direct attorney, let's see.
Doug, were you ever charged? Is there a formal charging document charging you with the murder of Nicole Vanderheiden?
No, I was not.
Doug, you were asked on cross-examination about your ownership of some guns. You own a handgun?
No, I do not.
Mr. Sugar had asked you if you took a shower before meeting with police officers. When did you take a shower on May 21st?
It was after I made the call for the missing persons report, and I was wearing the clothes from the night before, and I needed to just feel cleaned up and refreshed, I guess.
Would it be typical for you to take a shower during the day
Yes, definitely.
prior to meeting with people?
Yes.
The clothing that you were wearing at the bar the previous night, you were wearing that exact same clothing when you met with the sheriff's office? Excuse me, the pants at least and the shoes?
I was wearing the same pants and same shoes.
And the undershirt, the t-shirt that you were wearing, that 94-7 t-shirt, you still wearing that the next day?
I was still wearing that the next day in the morning, up until I did take the shower at 4:30 approximately.
Doug, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 43. Can you identify that exhibit?
That is a picture of my son and me in the morning or afternoon. I don't exactly recall when it was, but I sent that to Nikki in a Snapchat message directly to her.
That's the message you sent to Nikki on the 21st. And what was the purpose of sending that Snapchat to her?
Just mommy and daddy daddy and Dylan are here waiting for mommy to get home, just to see if she would respond at all and see if she would open the Snapchat. You can tell if she's opened it, and then, I would see that her phone was on, and then if she was ignoring me or not.
You were trying to reach out to her and find out where she was.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for admission of the exhibit and ask for permission to publish.
Subject to recross, any objection to 43?
No, Your Honor.
All right, 43 is received, and you can publish it. Big screen again? Attorney Lassay? All
Yes,
right.
please.
Let me publish it on the screen.
You told officers when you met with them in the early morning hours of the 22nd that t-shirt was the one that you were wearing out the previous night.
Yes, it did.
You slept in that t-shirt,
Yes.
and you were still wearing that then the next day?
Yes.
Did you wear it until you showered?
Yes.
You were asked several questions on cross-examination about you being with Nicole when you were at the Sandlot and whether or not you spent time with her. Did you spend time with her while you were at the concert?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You guys were together enjoying the show?
Yep.
You know if there were any photographs of you enjoying the show?
Yes, there was. I remember we took kind of a selfie together, because a couple days prior, I had an old Facebook picture from way back when Wisconsin was in the championship game, and it was a picture of Frank Kaminsky holding the Final Four trophy, and I had that up for like a year or whatever, too long, and she said, you need to change your Facebook profile picture, and said what she said was take a profile picture. So we took a picture, several pictures.
Doug, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 44. Can you identify that photograph?
There's a picture of Nikki and I at the Sandlot, I think during the Steel Panther concert, while they were playing, I believe.
I would request that 44 be admitted into evidence and ask for permission to publish that as well.
Subject to recross, any objection to 44?
No, Your Honor.
44 is received, it can be published.
But is the picture on the screen up there, is that the same picture that's in exhibit 44?
Yes, it is.
I should ask, I didn't put this on the record before, the picture that was up on the screen and published for the jury previously, the one of you and Dylan, is that what was depicted in exhibit 43?
Yes, it is.
Doug, you were asked extensively about text messages between you and Nikki. I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 41, and I'm going to ask you to reference that. So beginning at numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6 of those text messages listed, those are all messages from Nikki which certainly voice her frustration and use some vulgar language toward you and things of that nature.
Yes.
And then number 7, text message number 7, that's a message from you to Nikki, is it not?
Correct.
And in the far right, it actually indicates specifically what the message is. Can you read that for the jury?
LOL, stop, ... You are with Crystal, be good. I'll see you at the sardine can, ?
That was your response to Nikki after receiving 4 relatively vulgar text messages.
Yes, it was.
And then the very next message, number 8, can you read that message as well?
Hello, ? Try calling 10 times.
And that's from you to Nikki.
Yes.
And then the next message, number 9, is a response from Nikki to you, and what's that response?
Sure, you still love whores.
And your response to that is in number 10, what is it?
LMAO, ... Really, ?
And then messages 11 and 12 are again messages from Nikki voicing her frustration. In 13, you respond with what?
And on 13, I said, durr, DURRRR.
What did that mean to you?
Just, I don't know, you're being kind of stupid, silly, I know.
And the next text message, number 14, is also from you to Nikki. What is that?
LOL, I'm with Greg at the bar.
And Nikki responded to you.
What bar?
And then she sent a series of messages to you that again were vulgar and demonstrated that she was potentially upset with you, right?
Yes.
And then 19 in particular, I believe you referenced this text message. She sends you a message at about midnight, and what does that message say?
Whatever, sardine can with your so-called friends, but good thing I found someone I know.
So is that the message that you were referring to earlier when you said you believe she ran into a friend?
Yes.
And your response to her in number 20?
Stop, babe, ... I'll be there soon.
On the entire next page, she sends you again a series of relatively upsetting text messages, things that might potentially make someone upset if they read them. Is that right?
Yes.
And then on the last page of the exhibit, it's the first time you respond to that series of text messages, looking at 36, what was your response to her at about 12:45 a.m.?
Call me, please.
And then the next message, 37,
Where are you? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark.
and then 38, one last message from you to Nikki.
WTF? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark.
And what does WTF mean to you, Doug?
What the fuck? You know,
And your tenor or tone in sending that message to her at that point at 2:44 a.m.?
just, you know, what the fuck? What's up, you know?
Hadn't heard from her?
Yeah,
Wondering where she was?
correct.
And did Nikki respond to any of those messages that you sent, 36, 37, and 38?
No, I don't believe so.
In fact, you had no contact with her at all after you sent 36, 37, and 38?
No, except for me trying to reach out to her and her phone, you know, going straight to voicemail.
You were never actually able to reach her after that?
No.
Doug, you were asked knowledge of the area, your familiarity with the area by Hoffman Road. You're a lifelong resident of Brown County,
Yes, I am.
and your family owns a business where you develop real estate.
Correct.
In fact, the area where you developed your own home, you built quite a few homes in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I'd say we built upwards of 50 homes in that, just in that subdivision alone.
The area where you built in that subdivision, in the area of Berkeley Road where you live, at the time that you built that, would you describe that as kind of the end of town?
Yeah, that was, you know, on the outskirts of any developments, new developments.
If you leave Berkeley Road and you take a left out of your subdivision, where would you be heading?
You'd be heading out into the rural farmland and Scrayes Hill area and south of, you know, it's not much out there.
If you took a right out of your subdivision and then took the first right, what road would you be on?
That'd be on Dickinson.
And where does that lead?
That leads up the hill past the golf course and up also out into the country towards Denmark. And
Do you know how far the area on Hoffman Road where Nikki's body was found, do you know how far that is from your house about?
a few miles.
If you had gone a few miles in either of those other two directions, where would you be? The other two directions that I referenced, if you had taken a right and gone up G, or if you had taken a left and gone up X, where would you be?
You'd be, depending on which way you went after you went to the end of GV, there's multiple routes to go. I mean, you'd be out in farmland unless you went right on X, you know, towards PP. You'd be, you know, there's some another subdivisions and condos and apartments, but you'd be generally in some more rural farmland areas.
There's a lot of wide open spaces with nothing in them within 3 miles of your house.
Yes, a lot of undeveloped land.
The area on Hoffman Road where Nikki's body was found, how close is that to substantial development?
Pretty close.
So the area, in fact, you were asked about Ziggy's, which is about a half mile from there.
Yes.
If you go just to the west of Ziggy's, where are you? You just keep going up Hoffman past Ziggy's, where would you be?
Oh, right up on, you'd be on Webster.
Right in the middle alleyway, right?
Yes, yep.
And where the Brown County Sheriff's Office is located, Doug?
Yes, I do.
Where is it?
Right at the corner of Hoffman and GV, Lime Kiln.
What was it before it was the Sheriff's Office, do you know?
It was S&L Motors, and it was vacant for some time.
You ever drive by the Sheriff's Office?
I drive by it daily. Anytime I leave the house, pretty much, that if I'm going that way down GV, I'm driving by it. Anytime to work or going shopping, whatever.
How tall are you, Doug?
About 6'2".
How much do you weigh?
Currently about 185.
You were asked earlier about how many times you met with the state to prepare for your testimony here today. Were you ever told by the state what you're supposed to say?
No, I was not.
Do you recall the main tenor of what you were told by the state in your preparation?
Just to be truthful and state the facts.
No further questions, Doug.
Recross, Attorney Stricker.
How much did you weigh in May of 2016?
Probably about 10 pounds more, 190, 195.
I believe when you were booked into the jail, it said about 200.
That could be, I don't know if I don't know how recent my last doctor's appointment was and what I weighed, 195 or so.
And you testified earlier you do have a concealed carry permit.
Yes, I did.
What guns do you own?
I own a 243 rifle. I own a 12-gauge shotgun, actually two of them, and a 223 rifle.
Is your 243 rifle sawed off?
No, it is not.
So you cannot conceal that in your pants or shirt or anything like that?
No.
Are either of your 12-gauge shotguns sawed off?
No.
So you can't conceal them in your pants or your shirt or anything like that?
No.
How about your 223? Is that sawed off?
No, that's a long rifle as well.
You can't conceal that in your pants or anywhere?
No.
And then going back to your text messages, Doug, you talked about the text messages with the state that you had sent. The last text you sent in that block is at, what, 243?
Are you referencing 38?
I'm referencing 37, so 101:13 a.m.
Yeah, it says 6:01, so it was a 5 hours difference. Yes.
And you didn't text her again?
I text her again on 38 there, WTF.
Later that day, after,
Well, later that morning, yeah. I think that's, I believe that was when I was at home. I believe that's 5 hours. That would have been 2:44.
thank you. I have no further questions.
Any other redirect?
No other redirect, Your Honor. I'd ask that the witness be excused from the sequestration order.
We ask that you remain under the sequestration order.
All right. Under the circumstances of the case, Mr. Detrie, you're still going to be under the sequestration order, all right?
Okay.
So you can't remain in the courtroom, but you can be excused and step down at this time, all right? State may call its next witness.
State intends to call Detective Lee Kingston. I just want to confirm that he's here.
Spell your last name.
Lee Kingston, Kingston.
Whenever the state is ready.
Detective Kingston, can you state for the record how you are employed?
City of Green Bay Police Department.
And what is your current role with the Green Bay Police Department?
I'm a detective.
How long have you been with the Green Bay Police Department?
23 years,
How long have you been in the detective division?
10 years.
As part of your work with the Green Bay Police Officer or Police Department in the detective division, were you called in to assist with the investigation of the death of Nicole Vanderheiden?
I was, yes.
What was the nature of your assignment?
The initial phone call was to come in and assist the county with a body that had been found and to assist investigating in general.
Do you recall where you reported upon being called in?
Yeah, two perimeters set up, an outer perimeter and inner perimeter. I never entered the inner perimeter, which is where the body would have been. And then there were other officers and investigators on scene. So I just waited for direction from Lieutenant Valley as to how we should assist.
Do you recall about what time you arrived on that scene that day?
I want to say later afternoon.
And ultimately, did you receive direction about how you could assist?
Yeah.
And what were you assigned to do?
Myself and a deputy were asked to speak with Greg Matthew initially.
And who was the deputy that was with you?
Caters.
And where did you ultimately speak with Mr. Matthew?
Yes.
Where did that take place?
At the Brown County Sheriff's Office.
Was Mr. Matthew under arrest?
No.
Did he speak with you voluntarily?
Yes.
About how long was your interview with Mr. Matthew?
I want to say probably an hour, maybe a little longer.
What was Mr. Matthews' demeanor during your interaction with him?
Very cooperative, very helpful, answered all of our questions freely.
And after speaking with Mr. Matthew, did you have an additional assignment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Later in the evening, we were asked to speak with Doug Detrie,
Where did that take place?
again at the Sheriff's Office.
And in your interactions with Mr. Detrie, did you have an opportunity to observe his demeanor?
I did, yes.
What was the nature of his demeanor?
Kind of two parts. Initially, he was always cooperative, spoke to us freely, answered our questions, offered whatever he could to help. Later in the interview, when we discussed the possibility he had brought it up to us of a body being found, that it may be Nikki, then he became upset, cried, in my opinion, acted appropriately to that situation.
So when your interview started with Doug, about what time was that interview?
I think it was right around midnight.
Very late at night.
Yeah.
At that point in time, you knew that Doug was aware that a body had been found.
Yeah, it had gone across the news.
And at some point during your interview with Doug, you shared some information with him about the possibility that this might be Nicole?
Yes, towards the very last part of the interview.
What type of information did you share with him?
Well, he had asked a question because he was becoming more and more upset or anxious, wondering, because he up until that point we hadn't talked about a body being found. So he came out and asked us if can you tell me about this body that was found? Do you think it's her?
And what did you share with him that would have led him to believe that it might be Nicole?
Eventually, we talked about the similarities from what I knew of the body that had been found and things that he had told us about Nikki, hair color, general description, a belly button piercing. And I left it with him that I couldn't say for 100% certainty that it was her, but there were similarities.
What was his reaction to that information?
He broke down and cried, and again, I acted what I would consider to be appropriately.
Did you ask Doug for any items of evidentiary value that night?
Yes, we collected his, in the interview, we asked him what he had been wearing the night before when they went out, and he stated that the shoes and jeans that he was currently wearing in the interview room were the same ones that he had on the night before. So we collected his shoes and jeans.
And he provided those to you freely at the sheriff's office without having any other pants and shoes to wear home?
Yeah, he said, whatever you need, I'll do whatever, I'll give you whatever you need. And then ultimately his parents, I believe, came and picked him up and brought him some clothes to wear, I think.
Did you make Doug aware that there was going to be a search warrant at his house?
I did, yes.
Did you request his consent to search his house?
I didn't necessarily request his consent. I explained to him how during investigations like this, the next step would be that we would search his house, and he said he understood. And I said that there were currently, I believe, deputies on the way to search with a search warrant, and he basically said, that's fine, you know, whatever, I understand, whatever you guys need to do.
And how long was your interview with Doug that morning?
Just about 3 hours.
And he was there voluntarily?
Yes.
During the time that you were with Doug, did you have an opportunity to observe his person?
Yes.
Did you observe his hands and his face?
Yeah, we asked him if, he showed us his arms, I believe, from about the elbow down. Didn't observe any injuries that we could see on his face or, anything that was exposed. I couldn't see any injuries.
Did you observe if Doug was wearing a Fitbit device?
I did, yes.
And he was?
Yes.
Examination.
Thank you, Judge. Lieutenant Kingston, you said that you talked about some of the similarities between the body that was found in Nicole with Doug.
I did, yes.
Did you discuss the details of the body that were found in terms of cause of death?
No.
You didn't tell him that there was a suspicion that there was strangulation involved?
I don't believe so, no.
You didn't tell him that you believe she'd been hit in the head?
I may have told him that the body looked like it had been, like someone who had been in a fight. But basically just that there was a body found and that the general description coincided with Nikki.
But you never spoke about the specific details of that?
No.
You never specifically told Doug that Nicole was hit in the head, correct?
No.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Detective Kingston, thank you. You may step down. Hearing no objection, he's excused. Your next witness.
I think our next witnesses are on their way. They're coming right over from Green Bay PD. We went a little faster this morning than we anticipated, so they're on their way over. A couple minutes.
Take a break now.
Why don't we just sit tight for a few minutes, and if it's longer than that, we'll take an early break, all right?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Jason Caters, K-A-T-E-R-S.
Whenever you're ready, Attorney Lassay.
Deputy Caters, can you state for the record how you are employed?
I'm employed by the Brown County Sheriff's Office.
What is your current position with the Sheriff's Office?
I'm a patrol sergeant.
How long have you been with the Sheriff's Office?
I've been a deputy since June of 2005.
And prior to your current assignment as a patrol officer, did you have a different assignment with the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I was assigned to the Brown County Drug Task Force.
And how long were you with the Drug Task Force?
I was with the Drug Task Force for under 2 years.
When, on May 21st of 2016, what was your assignment with the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
I was a narcotics investigator assigned to the Brown County Drug Task Force.
And as part of your assignment as a narcotics investigator with the Brown County Drug Task Force, were you asked to assist in doing an investigation involving the death of Nicole Vanderheiden?
Yes, I was.
Even though you were a narcotics investigator, were you asked to assist in your capacity as a narcotics investigator or just to assist with investigation?
Just assist with investigation. It had nothing to do with narcotics at all.
And it's typical that sometimes the narcotics investigators will be asked to assist
Yes,
on cases unrelated to drugs.
correct.
What was your first involvement with this case on May 21st, 2016?
I was directed by Lieutenant Valley to conduct a neighborhood canvass on Hoffman Road, which directly west of where the female's body was located.
So you spoke with folks in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I made contact with 2 residences there and spoke to the occupants.
Did you do anything else on May 21st of 2016?
I was directed by Lieutenant Valley. That information was gathered that the deceased female may have been at the sardine can the prior evening and the watering hole, so I went to both establishments and made contact with the owners.
And what was the purpose of making contact with the owners at those establishments?
Find out who was working the night prior and locate video surveillance.
Were you able to do that?
Yes.
And you assisted with taking that video surveillance into custody?
Actually, Other officers of the Brown County Sheriff's Office went back later because it was going to take some time to download it, so they collected it at a later time.
You indicated that you did go to the watering hole on May 21st, 2016?
Yes.
And what did you do at the watering hole that day?
I made contact with the owner, Ben Brunette. He said it would take some time to download the video, so I made arrangements for somebody to come back at a later time.
Did you do anything further while you were at the watering hole?
Yes, prior to leaving the watering hole, I checked the parking lot for Mr. Detrie's vehicle, and I located his black Nissan Maxima in the parking lot.
You know about what time you were out there on the 21st?
Broad range, probably between 5 and 6 o'clock.
And what did you do with the vehicle at that time?
I checked the vehicle, I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, and I took photographs of the vehicle and notified Lieutenant Valley of its whereabouts.
And this was after 5 p.m., you believe?
Yes, I believe it was after 5.
And at some point, did you become involved in interviewing potential witnesses in the case?
Yes, I assisted Detective Kingston in interviewing Greg Matthew, and then later on Doug Detrie,
Where did the interview with Mr. Matthew take place?
the Brown County Sheriff's Office.
And how long was that interview, if you recall?
Several hours.
And what was Mr. Matthew's demeanor during your conversation with him?
He seemed very open. Didn't have to pry him for information. He was freely speaking.
He answered your questions?
Yes,
Do you know if you took a written statement from Mr. Matthew?
I did.
And did he review and sign that statement?
Yes, he did.
He was cooperative throughout your contact?
Yes, cooperative.
Was he compelled to be in that interview?
No, he voluntarily came to the sheriff's office. He actually drove his own vehicle there.
You mentioned that Mr. Matthew drove his own vehicle there. At some point later in the case, I'm taking this a little bit out of order, but did you have contact again with Mr. Matthew regarding that vehicle?
Yes.
And where did that take place?
It took place at his residence in the village of Bellevue.
Recall what date that was?
I believe it was May 23rd.
And why were you there to meet with Mr. Matthew on that day?
We just wanted to clarify some information from the first interview, and then we determined that we were going to take custody of his vehicle so it could be further processed by the Wisconsin State Crime Lab.
Did you take custody of any other evidentiary items?
I also took custody of the clothing that he claimed to be wearing on the night that Nicole went missing.
And that's Greg's clothing specifically?
Excuse me?
Greg's clothing?
Greg's clothing, yes.
Bringing you back to the 21st, after meeting with Mr. Matthew, did you have an opportunity to interview any other witnesses that night?
Yes, we interviewed Doug Detrie,
You recall where that interview took place?
the sheriff's office.
And do you know about what time that interview began?
It was later in the evening, probably between 11 and 12 p.m.
So around close to midnight?
Close to midnight, yep.
Do you recall how long the interview was?
It was about three and a half hours long.
And was Mr. Detrie there voluntarily as well?
Yes.
Can you describe what his demeanor was when you met with him?
I would say his demeanor was concerned. It seemed like he wanted to provide as much information as possible to find Nicole.
At some point during the interview, was Mr. Detrie given information that the body that had been found was potentially consistent with Nicole's?
Yeah, he brought up probably about midway through the interview that he saw in the news that a female's body had been located in Bellevue, and he wanted to know if it was Nicole.
And was some information provided to him?
Yes, Detective Kingston and I talked to him about it. Said it was inconclusive at this time, but we did say that the characteristics were there, that it was possibly Nicole.
What was his reaction to hearing that information?
From that point on, he pretty much lost it. He was crying, sobbing, seemed to be hyperventilating.
Were you able to make observations of Mr. Detrie physically while you were in the room?
Yes.
Did you? What were you looking for when you asked?
Mainly, I was looking to see if he had any wounds on his hands to see if he was involved in it at all, in the disappearance.
Did you note any injuries?
No, I didn't note any injuries, and we actually asked him specifically about injuries, and he was wearing a long sleeve shirt at the time, and he rolled up his sleeves to about elbow length, And I didn't notice anything on his arms or his hands.
You noticed if he was wearing a Fitbit?
Yes, I believe he was wearing a Fitbit on his, couldn't tell you what wrist it was.
Did you assist in removal of Nikki's vehicle from the residence on Berkeley Road?
Yes, I did.
And did you find keys at the residence?
I found 2 keys which I believed belonged to her vehicle inside the residence.
Did you attempt to use those keys to start the vehicle?
No,
When the vehicle was taken from the residence, did anyone start the vehicle up in order to take it?
I don't believe so.
So you never actually tried the keys in the vehicle to see if they worked?
No.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Investigative Caters, going back to the interview with Douglas Detrie, did you ever tell him what Nicole's cause of death was?
I don't believe so. I'd have to go back and review the video, but I don't think we, at that time, I don't even know if we knew at that point.
So it's fair to say you don't remember telling him that?
I don't.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then you may step down.
Thank you.
Is your next witness available?
I assume so.
All right.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Bailey Larson. Bailey, B-A-E-L-E-I-G-H. Larson, L-A-R-S-O-N.
Larson, how are you employed?
I am a forensic specialist with Green Bay Police Department.
What is a forensic specialist?
I go out to crime scenes, process crime scenes, videotaping, fingerprinting, taking photographs, swabbing for DNA, collecting evidence. I also do surveillance videos for businesses, for like retail thefts, any kind of that, robberies, burglaries.
Is there any sort of training or education that you have for that job?
Yep, I went to UW-Platteville for a 4-year degree in forensic science, where they do a lot of hands-on activities, which includes like processing crime scenes, collecting evidence from a mock crime scene house, dusting, swabbing for DNA.
And in addition to the educational background, is there any training specific to your work at Green Bay PD that you underwent as well?
On-the-job training from my 2 partners, Specialist 2 K. Meyer and Specialist 2 S. Krauth. Also, I've gone to some fingerprinting trainings throughout the last 3 years.
Is there ongoing education that you do while you're continuing to work?
Yes, the fingerprinting training, and then, yeah, just doing different trainings together, the 3 of us.
How long have you been with the Green Bay Police Department?
Just about 3 years.
And were you asked to assist with an investigation into the death of Nicole Vanderheiden on May 22nd of 2016?
I was actually called on the 21st.
Okay, so you actually were called on the 21st?
Yeah.
And what was the nature of the call or your assignment on the 21st when you were called?
We were called to come assist process the crime scene where she was found, but then we were told that the state was called as well, that the state was going to take her that scene, and then we were going to go to the house.
So initially you were called to respond to Hoffman Road where Nicole's body was found?
Correct.
And did you process that crime scene?
No.
The state crime lab did that?
As far as my knowledge, yes.
You were asked to then go to Nicole's residence?
We processed a vehicle first, and then we went to Nicole's residence.
Which vehicle did you process?
I believe it was a black Buick out at Brown County Sheriff's Department.
Do you know who that vehicle belonged to?
I was told it was a friend of Detrie's.
Mr. Matthew?
I don't know his first name, no.
In processing that vehicle, what did you do?
We did some swabs of some smudges and streaks on the exterior of the vehicle. Also with that, we do photograph the whole thing, and then 2 swabs in the inside.
You said you only took 2 swabs on the inside. How do you determine whether or not to take swabs from a particular area?
In this case, we were directed to swab areas, and we just did what we were directed to do.
And who was directing that investigation at that point?
Brown County Sheriff's Department.
So they were conducting a search of the vehicle and directing you to areas of potential evidentiary value?
I don't know if they necessarily searched it, but they told us what they wanted when we got there.
And the vehicle was at the sheriff's office prior to your arrival?
Correct.
And you were there simply to process, take swabs, take photos, things of that nature?
Yep.
And you indicated you did take swabs from the vehicle?
Not myself. I assisted.
And I say you, I guess, could you explain for the jury about how your unit works together?
So with my unit, there's 3 of us, and we assist each other with processing scenes, vehicles, different pieces of evidence, such as when we take swabs, the person that's swabbing will put on gloves and they're not allowed to touch anything. So someone has to assist and open up the sterile swab, hand them the swab, also squirt distilled water onto the swab so that it's wet so that they can swab an area. Also with that, someone photographs, and typically the person photographing isn't the same person doing the swab. So stuff like that. We also help each other package and enter in the evidence into the case as well.
Are you all cross-trained in those various roles?
Yes,
So on some scenes, you might be the person swabbing, other scenes, you might be the person photographing?
correct.
With respect to the Buick, what was your role in that particular investigation?
I was the one who photographed the house.
The house? How about the Buick? Do you recall what your role
I
was?
just assisted with swabbing.
And do you know who took the swabs of the Buick?
Specialist 2, K. Meyer.
Is that Kurt Meyer?
Yeah.
So after you finished processing the Buick and you collected items of evidentiary value, including the swabs, what did you do with those materials?
We packaged them, seal them, and then we entered them into our case once we got back to the station. That is,
You entered them into evidence at the Green Bay Police Department?
yes.
You know if those items were later turned over to the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
As far as my knowledge, they were.
That would not have been your role.
No.
In terms of the methodology that you utilized to collect those swabs, did you do that according to your training and protocol?
Yes.
After you processed the Buick, then where did you respond?
We went to the house of the missing person, which is 2329 Berkeley Road.
And upon arrival, what did you do?
We were told that we were going to process the house by photographing and then collecting whatever items they authorize us to collect.
So again, that was an assist to the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
And again, were they directing that investigation in terms of which items they wanted seized?
Yes.
And you were assisting, processing, documenting?
Yes.
What was your role when you got to Berkeley Road?
I was the one who took all the photographs at the scene.
Can you describe that process when you arrive on a scene in terms of how you photograph it?
We do overalls, so starting off with taking photographs of each side of the house, and then we move in, taking a photograph of the address, and then just throughout the house, overalls of every room before anyone searches, and then any items that they feel is relevant, then we take close-ups of those items.
And did you do that on this scene?
Yes.
You photographed the outside of the house, then the full interior, then specific items of evidentiary value?
Yes.
Ms. Larson, I'm going to show you a series of exhibits numbered 45 through 60. Could you take your time in going through these and then identify what these as a group are, not individually identify them? We'll do that by showing them. But
Okay.
Larson, collectively, what are those items?
They're photographs that I took of miscellaneous items throughout the house, overalls throughout the house, and then some items that we process in our lab.
Do those photographs appear to accurately depict the items that you observed that night, both in terms of the house overall and then specific items that were collected?
Yes.
They do appear to be your photographs?
Yes.
Not all of your photographs, so you took many more than that?
Yeah.
Your Honor, I would move for admission of those exhibits and request to publish them and then describe the photographs as they're being published rather than doing it individually, just to ensure that I'll have the witness identify, once it's published, which specific exhibit it is and have her describe the exhibit.
Right. I take it you've seen those already, Attorney Schiffern?
Yes.
They've been provided in this
Yes,
covering?
yes, we've looked at it.
Subject to cross, any objection to 45 through 60 being received?
Subject of cross.
All right. Subject to cross, exhibits 45 through 60 inclusive are received, and they can be published in the manner suggested by the district attorney.
Ms. Larson, before we begin publishing the photos, could you describe the general condition of the home?
It was overall just like a lived-in home. There's things out of place, but that's like a typical home.
It appeared that there was a young child that lived at the home.
Yes, definitely.
Could you describe it generally as clean, dirty?
In the middle, it wasn't like everything had its place, but it wasn't like a disaster. Like, just a lived-in home, like, so.
Ms. Larson, the photograph that's depicted on the screen now, can you describe which exhibit number that is?
Um, 47.
And what does that photograph depict?
It's an overall shot of the living room and kitchen area of the residence.
Do you know if any items of evidentiary value were collected in that area?
No, not that I know of.
Next photograph. Ms. Larson, the photograph that's now being shown, which exhibit number is that?
46.
And can you describe what's depicted in that photograph?
Overall of the living room area of the residence.
Next photograph. And Ms. Larson, which exhibit number is this?
45.
And could you describe what's viewed in that photograph?
The overall, the living room area of the residence.
And just for the record, to differentiate it from the previous photograph, which direction is this taken in terms of the rest of the home?
This one is southeast.
And that also shows some of the kitchen in the background?
Correct.
And which exhibit number is this photograph?
This is 48.
And what is depicted in that photograph?
Overall of the overall of the kitchen and like dining room area.
And of the last four photographs, were any items of evidentiary value collected in any of those areas?
No.
Did you or the officers observe, you or your other members of your team observe any blood in those areas?
Not that we saw.
If you did observe blood, is that something of evidentiary value you would have collected?
Yes.
And which exhibit number is this, Ms. Larson?
This is 49.
And what is depicted in 49?
It is the overall of the half bath that was across from the laundry room.
And this was in the, which floor of the residence was this?
The main floor.
Yeah, and what is depicted in this photograph that was potentially collected?
There's two like tissues on the floor. After being searched, those were found. I was told they were found in the trash can that had red substance on it, and also the green and white shirt that was found on the counter that was originally partially in the sink.
Do you know if those items were collected?
Yes.
Both the tissues and the sweatshirt?
Yes.
Next photograph. And what is depicted in this photograph, Ms. Larson?
Close-up of those two tissues that were found on the floor. Well, when I took a photo, they were on the floor.
What
They had
exhibit
red
number is that?
substance. 50.
And did those appear to have a reddish substance on them?
Yes.
Based on your training and experience, what did that suggest?
Potential for blood.
That's why those items were collected?
Pardon?
That's why those items were collected?
Yes.
Next photograph. And which exhibit number is this photograph?
It's Exhibit 3, which later was actually divided into Exhibit 3 and this is Exhibit 8. Oh, the photograph's 51, sorry.
Okay, so the photograph is 51. I
Yeah.
hear you mention Exhibit 3. What's depicted in this photograph?
It's a close-up of Exhibit 3, but we later split the two tissues into two exhibits.
They're exhibits for court purposes. You call them exhibits for your evidentiary purposes as well?
Yes,
Obviously, different numbering system.
yes.
And the purpose of putting the cone with the number 3 on it, what is that?
It's to mark which item we're on so that when we enter it in, then we label it as that.
That's part of your common practice and protocol when you're going to collect an item, that you put down the flag or the cone in order to denote it.
Yes.
Was that done with all of the exhibits that you collected from the scene?
No, because we split those two into two exhibits. We didn't, but that was like after the fact when we decided to.
For the remainder of the exhibits, when you did collect an item, did you always denote it?
Yeah.
Next. What is depicted in this photograph, Ms. Larson?
This is Exhibit 52. This is just like an overall of the hamper that was found in the master bedroom.
And the item that's listed on the far left side of that photograph, do you know what that is?
I would believe it would be a dresser.
And the next photograph? Which exhibit number is this?
54.
And what is depicted in that photograph?
It's a mid shot of sample 2 and sample 3 from the shower in the master bath.
When you say sample, what does that mean?
We took like a swab of 2 different areas in that shower.
The 2 different places where there are stickers are areas where you swabbed?
Yes,
And was that swabbing done according to your protocols and procedures?
yes,
Again, you were not the person who did the swab, someone else did,
correct,
and you photographed.
yes.
Next photograph. And Ms. Larson, this photograph is which exhibit?
53.
And what is depicted in Exhibit 53?
It's a close-up of sample 2 that was on the shower ledge of the master bath.
And what was significant about that particular photograph?
That it was like a reddish substance.
And a swab of that substance was taken?
Yes.
And which exhibit does this photograph depict?
This is 55.
And what is depicted in that photograph?
Just the overall of the piece of carpet that we cut out of the master bedroom.
And do you recall the purpose of cutting out the piece of carpet?
I would assume it was for, like, to see if there's any kind of substance on it for testing.
And the cutout of the carpet was done by your evidence team?
Yes,
And you maintained custody of that until it was turned over to the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
yes.
And the next photograph is which exhibit?
56.
And what does that photograph depict?
That's the overall backside of that piece of carpet that was cut out of the master bedroom.
Again, collected according to your proper protocols and procedures? Maintained in, is that a yes?
Yes,
Maintained in custody at the Green Bay Police Department until turned over to the Sheriff's Office?
yes.
And what is depicted, oh. What is depicted in the photograph on the scene now?
This is Exhibit 60, and it is the overall of sample 1 taken from this pair of shoes, which was collected from the scene.
So that pair of shoes was collected by the evidence section of the Green Bay Police Department? Do you know,
Yes.
is that a yes?
Yes,
Were officers using proper protocols and procedures when those items were collected?
yes,
And they were maintained at the Green Bay Police Department until turned over to the Sheriff's Office?
yes.
And what is depicted in the next photograph?
This is Exhibit 59. It is overall of sample 2 from this exhibit that was collected from the scene.
It's a different shoe, but it appears to go with the previous exhibit,
Yes,
and again, collected according to your proper protocols and procedures,
yes,
and maintained at the Green Bay Police Department until turned over to the Sheriff's Office.
yes.
The photograph that's up there now, which exhibit is this?
Exhibit 58.
And what is depicted in Exhibit 58?
This is the overall of those 2 shoes that were taken from the residence.
Again, these were collected using proper protocols and maintained at Green Bay Police Department until turned over to the Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
And Ms. Larson, what is depicted in this photograph?
This is Exhibit 57, and it's like a mid-shot of those shoes that were on the rack in the garage at the residence.
And the shoes that you located were actually on that rack in the garage when you collected them?
Yes,
So this photo does depict the evidence prior to it being seized.
yes.
And can you point out specifically or discuss specifically where the shoes that were collected are located on that rack?
It's on the 3rd rack from the top.
Thank you. Ms. Larson, do you recall if Green Bay PD evidence techs were called out to assist again on that scene on May 23rd of 2016?
I did not recall.
So the other 2 individuals from your unit were called out to that scene, but not you?
Yes,
You, on the 22nd, when you were there through the Berkeley house, did you go to every room in that house?
yes,
Did you note any odors when you were in the house?
no,
Is that something that you had observed? Was that something you would have noted?
yes.
And aside from the items that actually were collected, did you observe any other items that contained suspected blood?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did you note any weapons on scene?
Not that I recall,
Did you find a handgun?
no.
Find some sawed-off weapon?
Not that I remember seeing, no.
If you had seen a sawed-off weapon or a handgun, is that something you would have likely noted or collected?
Yes,
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Judge, can we approach for a second?
Sure. All right, the defense can present their cross-examination.
Thank you. Ms. Larson, you indicated that at first you were called to the Hoffman Road address, and the State Crime Lab took that one, right?
yes.
And so you and your team went to the Berkeley address.
First, we went to Brown County Sheriff's Department.
Oh, I'm sorry. You went to the Brown County Sheriff's Department and you took whatever evidentiary evidence you were directed to take from the Buick. Is that right?
Yes,
Now, if I understand it right, your job is to assist in the process and the document and the photograph evidence, right?
yes,
But you're not directing the investigation, am I right?
correct.
You went to the Berkeley Street address on 2 occasions, is that right?
No,
No. You went on May 22nd,
yes,
and that was the only one.
yes,
And you were directed to collect shoes from that residence, is that right?
yes,
And you photographed them.
yes.
And there were a lot of shoes in that house, weren't there?
As far as my knowledge, I would assume so.
Well, right on that picture there were several pairs, weren't there?
Yes,
And what you did is zoned in on the Air Jordans, is that right?
yes,
And you were directed to do that, is that right?
Correct.
Did you take photos of all the issues?
Overalls, yes.
Did you take them systematically, each side, front and back?
No.
And if I understand it right, you took many photographs, right?
Yes.
And this was just a small sample?
Yes.
Thank you, nothing further.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, we had a sidebar here that indicated there, apparently, Ms. Larson's taken more than just these pictures, is that correct?
Yes.
Or many pictures taken, and they may be presented during the defense's case, and therefore, it may necessitate you having to testify again, so I'm going to continue the sequestration order.
Okay.
All right, so you're not released at this time, but you may step down.
Okay.
Okay? And this will be our time for a break. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We'll be back at 20 to 11. Back on the record in the Burch matter, same appearances as before. We're continuing with the state's case. Attorney Lassay, you may call your next witness.
Calls Specialist Meyer.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Kurt Meyer, M-E-I-E-R.
Thank you.
Specialist Meyer, if you just speak into the microphone, whenever you're ready, Attorney Lassay.
Specialist Meyer, can you state for the record how you are employed?
I am an officer at the Green Bay Police Department, currently in the Forensic Division.
How long have you been working with the Green Bay Police Department?
Over 30 years.
What is your current assignment?
How long am I current assignment? Over 13 years.
What is that current assignment?
Forensic Specialist.
And is there any specific training that goes with that particular role?
I've been to numerous fingerprint schools, crime scene investigation, photography, blood spatter, evidence collection, evidence processing.
And that's the role that you've held at the Green Bay Police Department for the last 13 years?
That's correct.
What are your primary job duties in your role as a specialist?
Fingerprint examination and classification, crime scene investigation, which includes but is not limited to photography, collection of evidence, videography, and also analyzing video data.
And can you describe how your unit works?
There's three of us who work as a team usually. For example, if we get called to a crime scene, our team does various jobs. One may do photography, one may do evidence collection or with the help with another one. One may do video if that's called for at the scene. We all basically do the same job.
And you all are cross-trained in each of those different roles?
That is correct.
Were you, in your capacity as a specialist with the Green Bay Police Department, called out to assist the Brown County Sheriff's Office with an investigation into the death of Nicole Vanderheiden?
Yes.
And do you recall when you were first called out to any scene in that case?
When was I?
Yes.
May 21st. That would have been approximately 3-4 in the afternoon on that date.
And where were you initially responding?
An area off of Hoffman Road in Brown County.
You initially responded to the area where Nicole's body was found.
That is correct.
Did you have any role in processing that scene in the field where Nicole was found?
I did not.
And after you were released from that particular scene, where did you go next?
We were asked to report to the Brown County Sheriff's Department to help process a vehicle.
Do you recall what type of vehicle that was?
It was a black Buick four-door. I don't remember the plate.
What was your role in processing that vehicle?
They asked that we would photograph the vehicle inside and out, and there were some partial handprints or streaks on the vehicle. that they asked us to collect DNA evidence off of.
And do you know, what do you personally do?
I swabbed the areas that they marked out to us for DNA evidence.
Someone else was leading or directing which items you were supposed to take?
Yes,
And that was, you believe those were sheriff's office deputies?
that is correct.
And the sheriff's office was generally in charge of that investigation?
That is correct.
You were there to assist with the documentation and collection of evidence?
Yes,
And you do have specific training in how to take swabs?
yes,
Is that one of your primary duties as a specialist?
yes, it is.
On that date when you were swabbing the Buick, did you collect those swabs according to your training and experience?
Yes, according to our protocol, yes.
And what was done with the swabs after they were collected?
The swabs were packaged and they were later secured in our locked office.
Do you know if those items were later turned over to the Brown County Sheriff's Office for further processing?
Yes, they were.
After processing the Buick, where were you dispatched or where were you called out to?
We were asked to respond to 2329 Berkeley Road, Berkeley Street in the county.
When you say in the county, you're suggesting not in the city of Green Bay, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And again, what was your role in processing that scene?
We were asked by the county to help process the house. In other words, photograph and the collection of any evidence.
And do you have a protocol that your unit follows when processing a house as a crime scene?
Yes,
Was that protocol followed here?
yes, it was.
What does that protocol entail?
First thing that is done, that the whole scene is photographed as we find it, as it is. Once it's photographed, any evidence that needs to be collected is first photographed close up before it is collected as a piece of evidence.
And are proper precautions taken when items are collected to ensure the integrity of those items for further testing?
Yes.
And what are those precautions generally?
Each pair, with each piece of evidence, gloves are worn, a new pair of gloves to help protect against any cross-contamination in case we may have to swab it later for DNA or someone else swabs it later for DNA.
And those protocols were followed when you were collecting evidence at 2329 Berkeley Road?
Yes, they were.
What was your specific role in evidence collection on that scene that day?
My specific role was swabbing areas that was directed to us by the county, and also they had pieces of evidence that they would like collected.
Do you recall how many officers were on scene from the Brown County Sheriff's Office that day?
I don't remember.
Is it one, two, several?
Several.
And they were leading the search, you were collecting the items at their direction?
That is correct.
Did you have an opportunity to go through the entire house that day?
Yes.
And were you assisting in collecting items of evidentiary value?
Someone was assisting me in collecting the items. Another specialist, Croth, who's also on our department, assisted me in the collection of the evidence, as did, I believe, Specialist Larson, after she was done with the photographs.
You know who created an evidence log of the items that were taken?
The stuff that we took was done by myself and Specialist Larson.
And that was logged back in evidence at the Green Bay Police Department?
That is correct.
I should clarify, Specialist Meyer, you actually were then called back out to, not to that home in particular, but to the scene or the general area of Berkeley Road the following day, the 23rd?
The 23rd, that's correct.
And what was your role when you were called out the following day?
We were asked to swab, it was actually at, I believe the address was 2326 Berkeley, which is across the road from 2329. And we were asked to swab a lawnmower for possible DNA evidence.
And did you, again, take swabs and then collect those swabs and bring them into evidence at the Green Bay Police Department from the 23rd as well?
That is correct.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 61. Can you just review that and then describe it for the jury?
Yeah, this is a evidence log of all items that were collected, either swabs or items of evidence that were collected from the scene, from both 2329 Berkeley and from 2326.
That is the log of all the evidentiary items that were collected on both of those days.
That is correct.
I would move for admission of that exhibit.
That's 61.
Correct.
Right. Subject to cross, any objection to 61?
No objection.
61 is received.
Specialist Meyer, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 49. Can you describe what's depicted in that photograph?
This is the downstairs half bath of the residence at 2329 Berkeley. It's showing a shirt on the sink and the sink area and the toilet area.
And did you collect that shirt?
Yes,
And you were the person who was responsible for the actual evidence collection. You follow proper protocols?
yes.
Can you look at 50 and 51 as well? And what is depicted in those photographs?
These are two tissues that were collected from that same bathroom. They were packaged separately, following the same protocol.
And you were personally responsible for the collection of those items?
Yes,
And you followed your proper protocols and procedures?
yes.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibits 54 and 53. Can you indicate what's depicted in 54 first?
54 is an overall area where two swabs were collected in the shower of the master bedroom upstairs at 2329 Berkeley.
And what's depicted in 53?
'52, 53 is a close-up of sample 2, which would be on the shower ledge. That's of that same shower in the upper bathroom.
And that was a reddish stain on the
A reddish type stain, yes.
swab was collected of that?
Yes,
You were the person who collected the swab?
yes,
You did that according to your protocols?
yes.
Specialist, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibits 55 and 56. You can describe 55 first and then 56.
55 is a section of carpet that was cut out of the master bedroom just north of the bed, showing some kind of reddish orangey stain on it, which was collected by me also following the same protocols. 56 is the same carpet, only showing the back side of it, of that same piece of carpet that was cut.
You personally cut it out and collected it?
That is correct.
I'll show you what's been marked as Exhibit 57, and could you describe what's depicted in that photograph?
This is an overall of a rack of shoes that was on the east wall in the garage at 2329 Berkeley.
Are the shoes depicted in that photograph as you saw them prior to collecting evidence?
Yes,
Were you asked to specifically collect one pair of those shoes for potential evidentiary value?
yes,
Do you recall which pair of shoes that was?
Yes, it's the pair of shoes. It's on the third rack from the top. It's a pair of dirty white Air Jordans.
Both of them dirty?
Yeah, they were clean. So.
Showing what's been marked as exhibits 58, 59, and 60. Can you describe what's depicted in those one by one, indicating the exhibit number prior to the description?
These are the Air Jordans that were located on that third rack from the top, the Air Jordans that were collected.
That's 58?
That is 58. 59 is the right shoe, that same shoe, the bottom sole. And 60 is the left shoe, the Air Jordan that was collected out of that garage off that rack, bottom sole.
And you were responsible for collecting those items as well?
Yes,
And you followed them according to your protocol?
yes.
And then I would like to direct your attention to the 23rd of May. You indicated you were called back out to the same area but across the street on Berkeley.
Yes.
What was your role or assignment in processing the scene on the 23rd?
They asked us to photograph a lawnmower that was in the garage and to swab it for possible DNA evidence.
Did you have an opportunity to personally observe the lawnmower?
Yes,
Did you observe anything that appeared to be of evidentiary value just upon your initial inspection?
I did not.
But nonetheless, you took swabs?
Yes.
In addition to processing the lawnmower, did you do anything else out on the scene on the 23rd?
We were asked, I believe, by Lieutenant Valley to, I think there were exhibits 17 and 19 that they had marked out to do a presumptive test on them to see if there was indication that they were blood. And we did swab those and did presumptive tests on those two exhibits.
Can you describe what a presumptive test is?
It's one we use, it's called a hemodent, I think 7812. It's presumptive test. I think it's trying to locate the possibility if the blood is like mammal by testing the proteins that may be present in the blood. And you swab an area and you put it in a container and break an ampule, and then you break another one, and if it's indication of blood, it turns like a bluish green color, which did not happen here on both those.
Have you used this presumptive test for blood in the past?
Yes.
Have you generally found it to be accurate?
Yes.
Typically, if it comes back positive on the presumptive test, then what would be done?
If it would have been positive, then those areas would have been swabbed as DNA or part of the evidence that for evidentiary value.
And collected for further analysis?
And collected, correct.
I'm going to ask you to recall that scene a little bit. Do you remember sort of the overall nature of the scene in terms of where certain items of evidentiary value were located?
On the 23rd?
Yes.
There was red substance on the curb line and spots on the street, and there was areas on the lawn, reddish stains on the grass, and also what appeared to be some kind of blackish cord or wire that was there.
And was that all within a relatively
Close
confined area?
proximity, yes.
And items 17 and 19 that you were asked to swab, do you know where those were in relation to the cord and the reddish stains on the curb?
They were on the street, in close proximity of the other ones.
Close proximity within a couple of feet, or were they a little further up the street?
That That I do not remember.
Specialist Meyer, if you could describe what's depicted in Exhibit 62.
This is a photograph of Exhibit 19. It was placed there by county officers. And 63 is Exhibit 19, showing a marker that was also placed there by officers of Brown County Sheriff's Department.
I'm sorry, which exhibit had 17?
62, Exhibit 62.
17 or 19?
That's it. Which one had 17?
Exhibit 62 has marker 17. Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
Correct, thank you. And marker 19 is on Exhibit 60.
63.
Based on your just initial observation of those photographs and your training and experience, did those particular stains appear to be consistent with blood?
Just observing them, they're of a, especially 17 is a reddish type substance, which could be or may not be consistent with blood. Yes.
Is that why the presumptive test was done?
Yes,
And that presumptive test came back negative?
that is correct.
And number 19 as well, also did a presumptive test on that particular spot in the road?
Yes.
Have you been called out to prior crime scenes where you've had to process a road scene?
Areas of, yes,
And are you aware that there are other stains that are sometimes located in the road that are not blood?
yes,
Vehicle fluids, things of that nature?
correct.
Based on your training and experience, were these areas also potentially consistent with fluids from a vehicle?
Yes.
To move for admission of those exhibits, I don't think they need to be published.
Once again, 62 and 63 subject to cross. Any objection? All right, 62 and 63 are received.
I apologize, just before I finish up, return back to the early morning hours of the 22nd when you were in the residence at 2329 Berkeley Road, which is Mr. Detrie's residence. Did you go through that entire residence?
Yes.
Did you notice any strange odors?
No, I did not.
If you did, is that something you would have noted?
Yes.
Did you locate any handguns?
No.
If you did, is that something that would have been collected?
Yes.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Just so we're clear, Exhibit 62 and 63, those pictures taken, you took them because you thought there were going to be blood, and it turned out not to be blood, right?
We took, when you're saying take, you mean photograph or?
Yes.
We did not photograph these photos. I believe these were done by County Sheriff's Department. We were just asked to test them using the presumptive test for blood.
And they turned out to be negative.
That's correct.
So if I understand it right, you work as a team, and your other teammates are, well, can you list your other teammates?
Specialist Steve Krauth and Forensic Specialist Bailey Larson.
And when you're called to the scenes, you assist in this case, the Brown County Sheriff's Department, right?
That is correct.
And when you were called out on May 21st to the Hoffman Road, you were told, if I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, you were told that the state crime lab was going to try and ID the body, so you were directed elsewhere.
Yes. When we arrived on scene initially, the state crime lab was not there yet. So we were asked to wait till everybody showed up, and then it was going to be decided who was going to do what and divide up and do what.
So your team did not collect any evidence on the Hoffman Road?
We did not.
So it was the 21st when you were called to the Berkeley Street address, am I right?
Yes. I believe it was sometime, it was late, it was sometime after midnight, so could have been towards the morning, early morning of the 22nd too.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it looks like on the 21st, you first did the car at the Brown County Sheriff's Department, right?
That's correct.
You know about what time you started that?
I believe we were a few hours at the scene on Hoffman Road waiting for the crime lab to show up. If I had to estimate, it had to be sometime around 10:30, 11 o'clock at that night. It was later in the night.
Okay. And did you work all night?
We worked, yeah, and then after that went through the next day into the address on Berkeley, 2329.
So it was the next day then that you went to the Berkeley Street address, am I right?
It was after, yeah, it was around midnight or after midnight that we showed up there, so it would have turned over into the 22nd, correct?
And so it was at the Berkeley Street address that you did swabs of some bathrooms and...
Yes.
And did you do all the drains?
Did I do all the drains? No.
Did you do all the sinks?
No.
Did you do any of the sinks, drains?
No, I only did the areas that were requested. I was requested to do by Brown County Sheriff.
And so I take it you guys didn't do the sewer or anything like that either?
No.
And the Berkeley Street address the first time you would have gone there would have been the early morning, or would have been the next day, the 22nd.
Yeah, it was approximately that. Like I said, it was around midnight or close to it that we arrived on scene. It was,
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 57. Can you tell me what that's a photograph of?
This is a photograph of a rack of shoes located in the garage on the east wall, near the entrance into the house.
And what's that behind the rack of shoes? Is it
The refrigerator,
a refrigerator? Were there items on top of the refrigerator?
there appears to be items on top of the refrigerator,
Did
yes.
you look to see what those items were?
I did not.
You can see in that photograph there's a hallway, is that right?
Yes.
Is there anything hanging on the hallway?
Looks like a key rack with some keys on it.
Thank you.
Can I see 62 and 63? I haven't seen those exhibits. They're right on top there.
I don't know, Exhibit 50, was it 57?
The one you just showed me?
Yeah.
I thought it was 56.
Is that the picture I just showed you? The photograph?
57, yes.
It's photograph 57, am I right?
57, yes.
And that has a picture of the shoe rack, the refrigerator, the keys?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'd ask that that photograph be published for the jury?
All right, let's get 57 queued up, and we'll put it on the big screen. Do you want that done with some of the other photographs that you're referring to?
At this time, just this one.
All right, 57, please.
Now, just so I understand this photograph right, it's that's a picture of the shoe rack as you enter in the garage, right?
That is correct.
And so as you, if you were to enter the garage and then go into the house, that's a picture of the entrance to the house from the garage.
That's correct.
Thank you. One last question. There are, I assume, a significant amount of pipes in this house, am I right?
I assume so.
Just a normal.
Yes.
And did you do any tests on the pipes?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Excuse me, redirect?
Just to clarify that your particular role in this case was that you were being directed by the Brown County Sheriff's Office to swab and collect items that they deemed to have evidentiary value, correct?
That is correct.
A full search was done of this residence and people were making observations, and if they observed things of evidentiary value, you were then asked to seize them.
That is correct.
And it's your understanding that the entire house was searched and viewed by officers?
That is correct.
No further questions.
Any recross?
And the Brown County Sheriff's Office didn't direct you to look into the pipes and the sewers and the drains?
They did not.
Nothing further? Are you asking that this witness be excused? Defense counsel, again, this is someone that was working with Specialist Larson. What's your position on whether the Specialist Meyer can be excused?
He can be excused.
All right. You're excused and you may step down.
Thank you.
Next witness.
State calls Matthew Peterson.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Matthew Charles Peterson, Petersen.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Can you state for the record how you're currently employed?
I teach at Northeast Wisconsin Technical College,
And what do you teach?
biology and microbiology,
How long have you worked for NWTC?
a little over 10 years.
And I'm assuming you have education with respect to those areas of study?
Yes, I have a PhD in human physiology.
And where do you currently live?
2326 Berkeley Road in Ledgeview.
And is that the same location you lived at in May of 2016?
Correct.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Go right ahead.
Mr. Peterson, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 64. Are you able to recognize what that exhibit is?
Yes, this looks like an aerial view of my part of the neighborhood.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of your neighborhood?
Yes, it is.
And has it substantially changed any since May of 2016?
No.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 64.
Subject to cross, any objection to 64?
No objection.
64 is received.
And I'd ask permission to publish on the overhead, Your Honor.
We'll publish it on the big screen.
Mr. Peterson, I'm going to give you a pointer here. If you could, for the jury, once it's displayed here, could you point out the location of your residence? I'm sorry, could you? Yep. So for the record, there appear to be 5 houses on that exhibit. Yours is in the furthest to the bottom and left, is that correct?
Correct.
And are you also familiar with a neighbor of yours, Douglas Detrie?
Yes.
And you're familiar with where that gentleman lives? Is that also depicted in this photograph?
Correct.
For the record, you're pointing at the top leftmost residence, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Have a seat. Directing your attention to May 21st of 2016. Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
And what about that day sticks out to you?
I went out to mow my lawn at about 10 in the morning and came upon an area in front of my yard that was had a significant amount of blood.
And where was this area specifically?
It was abutting the curb at the very, very front of the yard, almost directly in front of my home.
Do you want him to show that on the photograph? Why don't we put the photograph back on the big screen? He can point that out with the pointer.
Approximately here.
It's approximately in the middle of the photograph to the left edge at the grass line and the curb, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And at that point, did you locate anything else in your yard?
Not immediately. I did proceed to begin mowing my lawn, and in the very first pass of mowing my lawn close to the curb, I heard a click. It was sounded like my blade of my lawnmower hitting something, and I shut my lawnmower off and found a piece of cord that I picked up and examined and then set aside.
Mr. Peterson, I'm showing you two exhibits marked 65 and 66. Could you identify each of those documents for us?
65 is a view from the street of my yard, including the portion of the curb that still has blood stains and a piece of cord. And Exhibit 66 is a close-up view of some of those blood spots on the curb and a piece of cord.
Do both of those exhibits appear to be fair and accurate depictions of the observations you made on May 21st of 2016?
Yes, they do.
I move to admit exhibits 65 and 66 at this time.
Subject to cross, any objection to 65 and 66 being received?
No objection.
65 and 66 are received.
And permission to publish, Your Honor.
They can be published on the big screen.
Mr. Peterson, we're looking at exhibit 65, is that correct?
Yes.
And you stated earlier you located the wire in your yard, correct?
Correct.
Could you, do you recall where approximately you came across the wire?
I do recall approximately where.
And could you point out in the exhibit approximately where that was? For the record, you're pointing towards the middle of the photograph, a little bit above the curb, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recall approximately how far away you were from the curb at that time?
I'm guessing approximately 1 foot.
Okay. You can have a seat, thank you. What did you do with the cord once you ran over it?
I picked it up and it looked a lot like the cords running along my lawnmower. So I initially thought that something had fallen off of my lawnmower. I inspected my lawnmower, tried to start it. It started just fine. At that point, I decided that the cord was a piece of garbage or something that had flown off of somebody's vehicle, and I just set it on the curb to pick up later, and I subsequently forgot to pick it up and proceeded to mow my lawn.
Now we're looking at exhibit 66 on the screen, is that correct?
Correct.
And is that the approximate location in which you placed the cord after running it over?
Yes.
And about, again, what time on May 21st did all this occur at?
Approximately 10 a.m. to the best of my recollection.
And at that point, did you notify law enforcement?
No, I decided that blood was probably from an animal. It would not have been the first time that there's quite a bit of wildlife in our yard. It would not have been the first time that there was blood from an animal, and I didn't even think about the possibility that it was a crime scene.
And was there a certain point when you did ultimately report your observations to law enforcement?
Yes, Monday, May 23rd, my wife called me at work just as I was about to end the day and said that there had been news reports that it had been Nicole Vanderheiden's body that was found in a couple miles from our house, and we decided that that was the appropriate time to call.
And did you know Nicole Vanderheiden?
I had waved to her from across the street numerous times. I don't know that I ever formally met her.
Well, were you familiar she lived across the street?
Yes.
And at that point, you reported your observations to law enforcement?
Correct.
since May 21st at about 10 a.m. when you first observed the blood in the cord to the time that you reported it, did the blood or the area with blood change in any substantial way?
I did mow my lawn through the area, and I know that resulted in some change. I know that some of the blood dried and browned a little bit, so there was a little bit different appearance. Otherwise, the area remained virtually unchanged.
And when you ultimately did report your observations to law enforcement, did officers arrive?
Yes, officers arrived at my home about the same time I did.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Can I ask that the exhibit of the overview house be placed up, exhibit 64?
All right, we'll have 64 published on the big screen.
Mr. Peterson, that's an overview of your basic neighborhood, am I right?
Correct.
And can you point out where your house is? Can you point out where the Detrie house is? And, thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. Now, you say this cord was found right out in front of your house, basically, right?
Correct.
And the reason it came to your attention is because you were mowing the lawn and you heard a click.
Correct.
And so you pulled the cord out and you kind of looked at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You touched it, looked at it, and put it on the street, right?
Correct.
And the purpose for that was so that you didn't run over it again.
Absolutely, yes.
And then you just finished your lawn.
Yes.
So it wasn't until the next, well, I'm sorry. Now, you were mowing your lawn on what day?
Saturday, May 21st.
And so 2 days later, on the 23rd, is when your wife called you?
Correct.
And your wife calls you because now she's watching the news, right?
I don't recall if she saw it on TV or heard it from social media. I don't recall where she heard it.
And so you guys were discussing what you had seen, right?
Correct.
And so you thought, boy, this may be some evidence to this case, right?
We thought that it was possibly evidence related to the case, but we were not sure.
So then you called the police and had them photograph and look at the scene, right?
Correct.
And as the police is there, you're starting to think back of suspicious things that you'd seen. Isn't that true?
I was racking my brain to think of anything that had happened in the last 48 to 72 hours that I could think of.
And you told the police that you'd seen a smaller car in front of the Detrie home, am I right?
Yes.
What did you observe about that car?
I believe it was the afternoon of Saturday, the 21st. I just noted a small car that that drove very, very slowly past my home and the Detrie home. And I believe drove from west to east. And I saw the driver talking on his phone, but looking at the Detrie home, and then turned around and drove back east to west and pulled into the Detrie driveway. And I don't recall that he ever got out of the car. The driver got out of the car, but was just on his phone the whole time. And it was just a slightly notable occurrence that I thought about as the police asked me if I had seen anything unusual.
You're just trying to help the police, right?
Correct.
Now, looking at that photograph, doesn't depict, of course, the whole neighborhood. Is that right?
True, yes.
Okay. What is the entrance? I'm sorry, if you can use the pointer one more time. What's the entrance to the neighborhood? Okay. And what street does that does that, well, that's Berkeley Street. What does Berkeley Street go to?
County GV.
GV, okay. So you've got County GV, and if we turn on the Berkeley into your neighborhood, are you guys way into the neighborhood, or are you guys the beginning of the neighborhood?
You're the first homes in the neighborhood.
Okay. On the picture, the lawn appears to abut up to, can you explain what that is?
There's a small creek
Okay.
that runs behind the Detrie home and over in this direction, and some long grass and trees and shrubs around the creek.
And that extends along
It
GV
extends,
for a while?
It extends behind the Detrie home and runs to the east for a short period.
Thank you. So you say that's a creek, right?
Correct.
And there's long grassy area around it? And there's ponds all over, isn't there?
A number of them, yes.
And on the other side of GV, there's more ponds, aren't there?
Not immediately across GV from where we are, but north and south, yes.
Isn't there a park that goes along on the other side of GV?
There is, yes.
A walking path, do you know the name of the walking path?
The East River Trail.
Thank you. And again, that's full of water and,
Yes, the East River is a couple blocks west of us.
thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. I would ask the witness be excused.
The witness is excused, Mr. Peterson. Thank you. You may step down. You have a short witness.
I think the next witness will be fairly short.
Yeah, why don't we try to squeeze in one more witness this morning?
Paul Nevenfeld. The state will call Paul Nevenfeld to the stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Paul Neuenfeld, Neuenfeldt.
Does anyone felt be seated and just try to speak into the microphone, all right?
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, Attorney Kerrigan-Maris.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to ask you how old you are,
35?
and do you have the microphone where you're comfortable, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. And what kind of employment do you do?
I'm in sports medicine as an athletic trainer
How long have you held that kind of position?
for about 12 years now.
Okay. Do you like sports?
I do.
Do you like running?
I do.
Can you explain why?
I wish I could.
So with respect to that, did you do that on a regular basis?
For about a couple months out of the year as I was training for different half marathons.
Were you training for any type of marathons, half marathons, or otherwise in 2016?
I was training for a half marathon in Milwaukee. That was in June of 16.
When does one start that kind of training, or what did you do in 2016?
I probably started at the end of March. So last week in March, first weekend of April, I started running. I'd run usually 4 times a week.
How far would you go?
It would vary from short runs during the week to long runs on Saturdays.
What do you consider a short run?
3 to 4 to 5 miles
Okay.
for a short run, and anything up to 12 miles for a long run.
And on what days of the week would you do the longer runs?
I would do my long runs on Saturday mornings.
Did you have a normal time you usually go for runs on Saturday mornings?
We'd usually try to meet at my house, usually around 5:30 in the morning, short stretch, and we'd probably leave my driveway usually around 5:40-ish, 5:45.
And when you say we, who are you referring to?
A friend of mine who was training for a half marathon.
What was his name?
His name was Adam Schmidt.
And did you always come over to your house to meet up?
Always in my house, correct.
And where did you live back in 2016?
In 2016, I lived in our current residence at the end of Berkeley Road, at the end, towards the end of Berkeley.
What's the exact address?
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
What exact address on Berkeley?
Address of mouse, 2365.
So Adam would come over to your home and you'd leave from that particular residence?
Correct.
What number was that, the overlay? 16. I'm going to ask, sir, we're going to ask if we could put up an exhibit that's been marked earlier. It's going to be up on the overhead, number 64. It's going to show an area. I'm going to see if you're going to be able to identify if it's the street that we've been talking about, Berkeley. It'll come up in just a minute. Which directions does Berkeley run?
Berkeley runs east and west.
Okay.
Houses.
Are you able to be familiar with that particular picture? Does that show Berkeley as you know it?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. There may be a silver pointer that's in front of you on, do you see any pointers?
Yeah.
Okay, great. With the court's permission, can you approach that exhibit and show us where your house would be located?
Go ahead, Mr. Neuenfeld.
No, it's not on.
Okay, so,
It's
sure.
not on that picture. I mean,
Sure,
I'd
just
be-
what direction? Thank
I'd
you.
be that way,
Okay.
down the road that way.
Are you on the top side, the north side of the road?
Correct, the north side, yes.
But your house itself, your home is actually not pictured, is that correct?
Correct.
Being familiar with the road, do you know about how many houses down it is?
That my current residence is?
That yours, yes.
Seven, it's the next two-story home.
Okay, so then, when you left your home, can you show us the way you traveled then, if it's depicted? I know it doesn't have your
Sure.
residence, but once we come into view, where would you be?
We're on this side of the road right here.
So you're indicating the south
The
side?
south side of Berkeley, correct?
Do you know for a fact you ran on that side of the road?
Yes.
And why would that be?
We always ran on we always crossed the street, walked until we got to the road that was right there, and then we'd start running, always on that side.
Is that so you can see the traffic coming at you?
Correct.
If you could, was there any spot or any area as you ran along Berkeley that you noticed something unusual? If you could indicate that with the pointer.
There was, yeah, around in this area, there was something unusual when we got to that spot.
And I apologize, I think I jumped ahead. If you'd like to have a seat, please.
Oh,
Back to your running in 2016. On May 21st of 2016, did you have that routine where you got up and got going?
correct, yeah.
And on that date, that Saturday, do you remember about what time you left your home?
It was rough about 5:40.
Okay. And Adam was with you, I take it?
Correct.
And did you run in the direction you just indicated on the south side of the road?
We did.
And then I just had you while you were near the diagram. There was something that you noticed at this point in time?
Correct.
What, in fact, did you see or what happened?
We got to that spot and it came up pretty quick on us. There was a larger matter, a red matter that was on the closest to the curb with a smaller little piece, circle, just to the right of that.
The red matter, can you indicate how large an area that you observed?
Would you, with my hands, or
Sure.
just, it was about the size of a dinner platter on the left with a smaller, just to the right of it.
And, I'm sorry, to the left was what?
It was a larger red matter that was on this, it was on the road.
Okay, you're indicating a red matter. Was it, did you indicate like a pool, or was there some red object, or what are you referring to?
It was the platter, it was a darker outside with a more red color. It was still, it appeared to be more liquid in the middle. A different color red with that same center core color just to the right.
Have you seen blood before, sir?
I have.
And based on what you're looking at, what did you think you were looking at?
I assumed it was blood.
So this pool of what appeared to be blood, there was one section that was like a platter size, is that correct?
Correct.
And then how close to it was this other,
Just adjacent to it.
and was that a smaller amount of what appeared to be blood?
It was.
You indicated the colors were a little bit different between the two?
Yeah, the one had a little bit darker on the outside, which it got to be more of a red in the inside, a larger one. And the smaller one was more of a red color.
As Adam approached these two areas, did he do anything with respect to running?
It was, I had noticed it first, and I just told him to quick jump. And I don't remember if he got the jump or if he not, because I jumped too. And then we had looked back at it and, conversed a little bit about it and then kept going.
Okay. At the time, what did you think that might be from?
We thought it was an animal. I mean, that's right to the first part of the marsh. So there's deer, rabbits, and multiple animals that are there. So we thought an animal had got hit.
But your impression at that point in time was it was the blood of something, is that correct?
That's correct.
Prior to arriving today, sir, were you able to view a video?
I was.
When you watched that video, sir, did you recognize the what was depicted in that video?
I don't understand.
Recognize scenes that were in the video?
Yeah, correct.
Was it showing locations that you were familiar with?
Correct.
In fact, what actually was shown as far as the locations?
It was showing where we were running just before the last house on the south side of Berkeley.
I may approach.
Go ahead.
So you were familiar with the streets that were shown in the video, sir, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you actually recognize any persons in the video?
Outside of my running partner, that's the only thing I recognized.
You recognized yourself?
Myself, correct. Excuse me, yeah, myself too.
And were you able to determine, did it show your approach on May 21st of 2016?
To my knowledge, yes, it did.
Were you able to see, did it actually even show the pools that you were mentioning on this video, or was it hard to tell?
It was hard to tell, but there was a darker area that I had looked at twice to see that could possibly be it, yeah.
Okay. And the way it depicted your movement, was that in fact the way and direction that you were traveling on May 21st, 2016 at about 5:45 a.m.?
That's correct.
With the court's permission then, I believe there's no objection, we'd ask that exhibit that was just marked, and I'm sorry, what number would that be, Madam Clerk?
65 or 67? Excuse me, 67. Any objection to 67 being shown?
No objection, can I just get the number?
67.
67, I think she said.
67 is received and it can be shown to the jury at
And
this
just
time.
before we start, sir, do you remember, as we look at it, do you remember what color shirt you have on versus Adam?
Yeah, yes, correct.
What color?
It was a neon, usually a neon dry fit shirt. Yellow,
Yellow?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. And sir, if you want, just one. We're going to actually show you, sir, what's, for the record, it's marked 5:30 to, oh, yeah, thank you, 5 to 5:30 on the video. Can you let us know when you see yourself, sir?
Okay. There, we're coming up right there. Yep, we're right there, yep.
That's you in the
I am in
yellow.
the yellow, correct.
Thank you. Now, that direction, obviously, you were not driving that car at the time, or whatever vehicle was used, is that correct?
Correct.
But you're coming, which direction you're traveling on Berkeley at that point
That
in
would be
time?
west on Berkeley.
And we're looking at Berkeley as we speak, is that correct?
That is Berkeley, correct.
No further questions, thank you.
Cross-examination.
I don't want to butcher your last name. Can you repeat your last name again?
Neuenfeld?
Neuenfeld, that isn't that bad. Mr. Neuenfeld, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 68. Do you recognize that?
I do. That's the statement I gave to officers.
Do you remember what officer you gave it to?
I do by looking at his name. I mean, Mr. Officer Wilson.
Officer Wilson, thank you. Now, I heard you testify today. What day were you running?
That would be that was Saturday, May 21st.
Okay. I noticed the first sentence on this says, well, why don't you tell me what it says?
On Friday, May 20th, 2016.
The day you were running was on Saturday, the 21st, right?
I ran both days, correct?
On both days?
Correct.
So what you're testifying to today, though, the day that you saw the matter on the street, what day would that have been?
That would have been Saturday, May 21st.
So you saw that video?
I did.
And that video was actually an entrance into Berkeley Road, right?
Correct.
And that video showed you jogging, right?
Correct.
And you saw on that video the spot where the blood matter was, right?
I believe so, yes.
And did you also see in the video on the north side, the house had a garage door that was open?
I do not recall.
Can we cue it up? I'd ask that the video be published so we can cue it up.
All right, let's publish 67 again for the witness.
We asked it run. Now we're witnessing the entrance to Berkeley Road, am I right?
That's correct.
And on the right would be the south side,
That's correct.
and on the left of the video would be the north side.
That's correct.
And the first house on the north side, do you notice anything with the garage doors?
They're open?
Thank you.
For the record, the same amount of the video was shown with the same points.
Record will so note.
And I don't know, what is your usual route to go to Berkeley Road to the East Trail River?
No.
No?
It's our road, we always leave that way, out of the neighborhood, correct? That would be correct.
So when you leave Berkeley Road, you go on to GB,
We usually cross GB.
and where do you go from there?
It all depends how far we were running.
Just,
It's mapped out before, yeah, it all depends.
okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Nothing further.
Anything else, any redirect?
Nothing further, we'd ask you to be excused.
Thank you, Mr. Neuenfeld. You may step down and you're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our lunch break. Two things I just want to talk to you about before you call the bailiff over earlier. And the request was to ask a question of one of...
I couldn't hear his question.
Well, you couldn't hear the question. Okay, so it was just a matter of not being able to understand the question. All right, well then I just ask again the attorneys to speak loudly and the judge so that the jury can hear everything. All right. The second thing is that before you were brought out for this last session, we had a discussion out here in court. The state anticipates calling a few more witnesses this afternoon, but a new legal issue has just arisen during the course of the trial that really both parties need to review. They have to review information and perhaps even do some legal research. The state will have some out-of-town witnesses tomorrow. So what we're going to do this afternoon is have the state call some witnesses, but it's anticipated 2 or 2:30 they'll be done with their witnesses for today. That will allow the parties to review and prepare for this latest legal issue. But I want you to be certain that in talking to the attorneys to both parties, we're on track. The fact that we're going to knock off a little earlier today isn't going to push back the estimated time. We're still going to get done within 2 weeks, all right? Anything else to that regard, Attorney Lassay or Attorney Cano?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, just so you have an idea of what we're anticipating this afternoon. Have a good lunch, and we'll be back here at 1:15.
All rise.